I always felt like the shadow in my own family, the overlooked daughter in a house where my brother was the golden child. As I stood at the kitchen counter, the aroma of my mother's famous lasagna filled the air. It was rich and savory, the mozzarella bubbling with a golden hue, the basil leaves dancing atop the soft pasta. I stirred the sauce with a wooden spoon, trying to drown out the sound of my brother's laughter echoing through the hallway. I could picture him there, all carefree, basking in the aftermath of receiving his brand new car worth $20,000 for his graduation. Can you believe it? A 32,000-mile warranty and everything. His voice rang out, infused with pure elation. I imagined him beaming, his youthful face lit up with that boyish grin he always carried like a trophy. It's amazing, honey, you deserve it. My mother's voice, warm and loving, enveloped him like her famous lasagna enveloped cheese, thick and indulgent. A heaviness settled in my chest, an ache that had become all too familiar over the years. What about me? The gravity of that question pulled at my insides like a vice. I recalled my own graduation day, standing there in a cap and gown, the fabric itchy against my skin, and wearing a forced smile as my parents rushed past me to embrace him. My heart sank as memories unfolded. Their quick pats on my back felt more like dismissals than congratulations. I had to remind myself that I graduated too, only to feel like a ghost lingering in the corner of that special day. I still had the photograph tucked away somewhere, a bright, falsified smile with eyes that betrayed the joy of my family's affection. Victoria, are you going to help her stand there daydreaming all night? My mother's voice cut through my memory, snapping me back into the present. I turned to her, forcing a smile. Just thinking about how great the lasagna will be, she smiled, unaware of the turmoil swarming within me. You have never had a complaint about my cooking, just like your brother is never going to complain about his car. Her laughter was sweet, yet it stung. I turned back to the counter, stirring the meat sauce and letting it foam and sizzle under my watchful eye, a task as mindless as it was comforting. I took in the familiar scents, feeling the warmth of the oven behind me, the clanking of pans, and the hum of family life, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. As my brother's laughter continued to fill the air, I glanced off towards the family room where he was most likely regaling my father with tales of how he had been to every dealership in town. My brother, the celebrated golden child, always had the spotlight, making me feel like I was mired in shadows, clinging to the edges of their pride. They could not seem to grasp how hard I had worked during high school, the late nights poring over textbooks, or the days spent bunkered in the library, studying while he was out playing sports and basking in the spotlight. The disparity haunted me, a recurring nightmare that still loomed large. Even sitting here, cooking for our family on what was supposed to be a day of celebration, I felt like the black sheep. I could almost hear the unspoken words, "You are not enough, you never were." My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a reminder of my inadequacies. Why could they not see how much I craved their approval? Once again, the laughter burst through the kitchen door like a jubilant tide, reminding me of the warmth and love I desperately sought. Silently, I vowed to stay true to myself as I ladled the lasagna into a baking dish, layering it thick with hope. Maybe if I tried hard enough, I would finally break through the walls they had built around their affections. Later that evening, after we had all gathered around the table, it became clear that I was still the invisible one. Remember when I won that track meet? He grinned, eyes sparkling as he leaned in closer. That was the best day. Mom and Dad were so proud. My mother nodded enthusiastically. Oh, I remember, you were so fast, I was terrified for a moment you wouldn't win. My father added, you really showed them that day. His voice was full of pride, practically glowing as he patted my brother's back. I felt my throat tighten, wishing more than anything for a murmuration of such praise. Do you remember your graduation? We were wondering what surprise we could give you. My mother continued. And then we thought, a car, isn't it perfect? She smiled at him like he was the sun illuminating our home. Absolutely, he replied, words bursting from him like confetti. I can't wait to drive it tomorrow, and there it was like a dagger to my heart, solidifying my feelings of inadequacy. I had always been an extra in a show where my brother was the lead. There was no acknowledgement of my sacrifices, my struggles, no mention of the sleepless nights, the dreams I had fought tooth and nail to achieve. We are so proud of you too, Victoria. My mother turned to me suddenly, as though sensing my distress but causing it to flare instead. Her smile was hopeful, as if waiting for me to rejoice in my brother's triumph. How is work going? Are you still saving for that art class you wanted? Yeah, I mumbled, staring down at the half-eaten lasagna on my plate. Just a little slow right now. Just like the time you wanted to run the 5K, right? My brother bellied out a laugh. But you tripped over your shoelace. Classic? Yeah, right. I shot back quickly, a defensive wall rushing up before me. That's not how it happened. Relax, I was kidding. He feigned innocence, raising his hands in mock defense. Yeah, well, I never got to run it again. I forced a smile, not quite managing to hide the hurt behind it. The conversation moved on, but I sat there feeling fragmented. Each laugh, each lighthearted jab pierced through my heart like cold air, reminding me of my place in this family. Nowhere but the margins. That night when the kitchen had finally quieted down, my parents settled down on the couch watching an old movie. My brother had taken his new keys to his room, excited to show off in the morning. I felt a weird sense of loneliness wash over me, like I was standing at the edge of an ocean while everyone else danced on the shoreline. They were all blissfully unaware of my internal struggle as I cleared the table, putting away the leftovers and scrubbing the plates. Something, however, took hold of my heart as I absently wiped counter surfaces. I recalled the day I discovered the family attic while searching for my old sports trophies a few weeks ago. I remembered climbing up those ancient, creaky stairs, illuminating the dusty corners with only a small flashlight. The musty scent of nostalgia wrapped around me, a bittersweet embrace from childhood memories as I rummaged through forgotten boxes filled with relics of a bygone era. Amidst old board games and moth-eaten clothes, I stumbled across a folder covered in dust. Pulling it out, I noticed it was a collection of paperwork that looked far more important than the junk around it. The moment my fingers brushed against the aged envelope, a jolt of electricity surged through me. I flipped open the folder and found the deed to our family home, addressed to me. My heart raced as I glanced around, as though afraid of being caught by someone who might want to take it away from me. I felt the remnants of the world vanish, the muffled sounds of my family below becoming a distant echo as I absorbed the significance of it all. Here was a treasure hidden in plain sight, more than just a physical possession. It was a revelation. It gleamed with untapped potential, a piece of security, a slot in their world that I could turn into something more. My parents had named me the rightful heir all along, even if they had never realized what it meant to me. As the weight of realization pooled inside me, I could feel every past slight boiling away, replaced by a fire igniting at my core. Tension clotted my insides as I felt it take form, an insidious plan that filled the empty spaces of my heart with a new resolve. Maybe my brother was the golden child now, but hidden within the walls of this home was a secret that could shift the balance of power, changing everything for me. As I stood in dim light that night, I could feel the shadows lifting, illuminating a path towards taking what was rightfully mine. Perhaps I would finally step into the light, leaving my role as the invisible sister behind, and become the master of my fate. The realization propelled me into a spiral of possibilities, visions of pride glimmering like stars against the dark canvas of my life with the fire of betrayal fueling my every thought. I pushed open the door to my parents' home, the familiar scent of wood polish and the faint aroma of flowers lingering in the air. The living room looked just as I remembered it, warm, inviting, filled with family portraits that felt like daggers embedded in my heart. My brother lay sprawled out on the couch, his gangly limbs stretched wide, an assortment of empty fast food wrappers scattered around him like confetti. His head bobbed to the rhythm of a video playing on his phone. He was grinning, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Wow, could he look any more like a clueless sloth? I thought with disdain. Everything about his demeanor, from the satisfied grin to the careless way he commandeered the living room couch, sent tendrils of anger snaking through me. I longed for a moment to shake him awake, jolt him into the reality of the unfairness of it all. I clenched my fists at my sides, steeling myself for what I had to do. My heart pounded like a drum, each beat a countdown to the confrontation I had rehearsed 100 times in my mind. I needed to know why they had chosen to hide the truth from me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all my pent-up feelings pressing down on me. Enough is enough, I whispered to myself, my voice lost in the silence around me. Why hide the truth from me? I asked point-blank, letting my voice rise above the clamor of my brother's laughter coming from the couch. My father, startled, froze mid-sentence as he looked at my mother. Her eyes widened for just a moment before she diverted her gaze towards the mantel, avoiding my piercing gaze. It was as if she could will away my presence, as though her inability to look at me could erase the betrayal I felt. "It's complicated, Victoria," my mother finally responded, her voice shaky, barely rising above a whisper. The way her words faltered stung more than I could have anticipated. With every syllable, it became clear that she wasn't just struggling to explain, she was struggling to face her own decisions. "Complicated," I repeated, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "You thought it was better this way." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, the words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Sweetheart, there are reasons," she insisted, her tone now shifting to a defensive one. Her hands trembled slightly as they clutched her robe as if it could provide her with comfort. "We thought you would be happier this way. It's just, how could you possibly think neglecting me was better?" I interrupted, my voice trembling like a tightrope stretched too far. The room felt charged, electric, as I unleashed everything I had been holding in. My eyes darted to my brother, who continued browsing his online shopping, completely oblivious to the unraveling family drama. When he is eating up the trust fund with online hauls and all you can think about is his future plans. What about my future, my life, my dreams? I had spent countless hours interviewing with companies, pouring my soul into applications, while he bought sneakers that would soon gather dust. You do realize he is wasting the trust fund you gave him on frivolous things, don't you? I couldn't keep the hurt from creeping into my voice. I felt like a balloon ready to burst, filled with resentment and anger, and with every word I was letting out the air. The silence following my outburst felt thick, almost suffocating. My father shifted in his seat while my mother let out a pained sigh. "Victoria, please," my father said, his tone exasperated. "Your brother needs this home to support his future plans, to give him a solid foundation." A solid foundation? My voice rose higher, sharp with disbelief. "By buying useless things that are going to end up cluttering your lives. It is not fair. He was never meant to receive all of this." I gestured broadly at the room that held every memory of my childhood, everything I had thought we shared. "I deserve it just as much, if not more." They were silent, their faces frozen in expressions of disbelief. "I just thought," my mother said hesitantly, but the sentence trailed off into an unspoken apology that hung in the air. An overwhelming sense of anger and betrayal surged inside me, bubbling over into rage. It felt like a furnace igniting with every word. "You thought neglecting my existence was better?" I asked again, this time low and seething. "You thought putting him first constantly was going to help me?" The truth was that every time they had chosen him over me, a little piece of me had died. Until today, when their ignorance and indifference felt more like a knife than a dull ache. Suddenly, my father spoke up, his voice firmer, but there was an edge of desperation present. "You don't understand, Victoria. This has always been about doing what we thought was best for everyone. You have to think of the bigger picture." I shook my head, the tears pooling so close to the surface that it took everything in me not to let them spill. "The bigger picture? You mean your twisted version of what you think happiness looks like? You think I would like being second best always?" I could feel my jaw clenching as frustration poured from my heart and onto my tongue. "It is not right." Their response was a dismissive wave from my mother, as if my feelings were insignificant, like dust on the shelf that could simply be brushed away. "Victoria, you have to understand that we are trying to protect you," she said, but it felt less like a reasoned explanation and more like a shield she clung to. "Protect me?" I echoed, the bitterness cutting through each syllable. "You've locked me away without letting me know what I was actually entitled to. This isn't help, this is betrayal." They fell silent again, and in their silence I noticed how they turned their backs on me, their unwillingness to really see or hear me echoing through the air like a sour note in a once beautiful song. The very thought sent a chill down my spine. There would be no reconciliation today, no understanding. This felt like a chasm that had permanently widened between us. As I turned to leave their house, the weight of betrayal hung heavy on my shoulders, pressing down like 1,000 stones. I could feel the hollow pit in my stomach, aching and raw. Eyes stinging, I blinked back, the tears held tightly at bay. I fought the urge to look back one last time, afraid of what that gaze might reveal. Everything had shifted, and I felt soulless, like a shell of the person I had once been. Betrayal sharpened my resolve, the embers of anger igniting a fierce determination. If they would not give me what I deserved, then I would take matters into my own hands. I could already envision the steps I would take, a plan slowly forming in the furnace of my heart. I would show them that I would not be just a convenient narrative in their lives. I would write my own. Exiting the house, I could still hear the dull thud of my brother's laughter, the echoes of my parents' justifications swirling in my mind. Unbeknownst to them, they had hung their very indifference on a thread, and I felt the resolve crystallizing within me. I wouldn't be second best, not anymore. I would reclaim my narrative, even if it meant crafting a path that arced with the sweet, bitter taste of revenge days melted into weeks. And with each passing moment, my frustration grew like an unseen beast in the corner of my heart, clawing for release. It was as if a thick fog had settled in our home, obscuring the very foundation of our family. A place where I was supposed to feel understood and valued, but instead felt neglected, overshadowed by my brother, the golden child. Each time I laid eyes on him, flaunting his shiny new gadgets, the latest phones which he did not shy away from brandishing to anyone who would listen, it twisted the knife deeper into my wounded pride. Sometimes I wonder if it was his purpose to rub it all in my face with that confidence of his, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. My parents' eyes gleamed with pride as they tolerated his every whim, and my heart sank, heavy with the weight of their blind devotion. I could no longer be the forgotten daughter in a family caught in a tragic cycle of favoritism and neglect. Yet, it stung more than any physical blow that they simply could not see how capable I was, how the years of effort and passion I put into everything remained unnoticed and unacknowledged. And then came that suffocating evening, the night I tipped over the edge. I had been eavesdropping, hiding around the corner, listening to their hushed voices as they flicked through the latest bills and receipts, the chaos of my brother's spending habits laid bare before their very eyes. My mother's voice trembled, laced with a worry I had not heard before. "I just don't know how we can keep up with this, Richard," she whispered, her tone thick with anxiety. Jason's spending is out of control. The way he buys things and goes on those trips, it's reckless. It was as if she were handing me the final piece of a puzzle I was desperate to solve. A moment so ripe with opportunity that it shot adrenaline through my veins. I felt the weight of years transformed into a wave of determination, crashing over me like the tide rolling ashore. The truth was there, evident under the glittering surface of my brother's lifestyle, illuminated so brightly that no one seemed to notice how dangerously it danced near the edge of a cliff. The frustration bubbled up inside me, fiery and relentless, until I finally saw a path forward, a chance to reveal the truth. My brother's recklessness needed a spotlight, and I was ready to shine it. No longer willing to hide in the shadows of his extravagant lifestyle, I gathered evidence, my mind a perfectly orchestrated machine as I scoured through countless photographs and bank statements. My fingers flew across my phone screen as I screenshot images of every sip of luxury he indulged in without any trace of guilt. A high-end watch, the latest game console that appeared on Christmas morning, his spontaneous trips to exotic places that my parents funded without blinking an eye. I could picture his smirk, his casual shrug as he informed me of his latest purchase. The thought fueled my indignation. One particular purchase stood out, a set of designer sneakers he had showcased on social media as he posed near a sprawling landscape. "Look guys, just treat yourself, right?" I could picture the raised eyebrows of our relatives, and the memory of their admiration for him stoked the embers of my resentment. But what stung more was the stark difference in treatment. While he played, I studied late into the night striving for greatness, only to be overlooked. As I sat there on my bed, myriad images accumulated in a folder, and I could see my plan begin to crystallize, a flawless performance of revenge without malice. It was not a personal attack, it was proof raw and true that could no longer be hidden, and at that moment I was not driven by hate but the strong desire to unveil the reality that had long been cloaked. Carefully, meticulously, I crafted a group message that would seal my brother's fate. It appeared harmless, just an innocuous update to family about someone's financial irresponsibility. I smiled, a twisted victory coursing through me with every word. "Hi everyone," I started, my heart racing as I drafted. "I just wanted to fill you in on something I've observed. I came across some financial statements and even some social media posts where I noticed Jason has been spending quite a bit recently on expensive gadgets and trips." I couldn't help but feel a thrill, a secret power blooming in me. I thought it might be important to bring this to everyone's attention, especially given what Mom and Dad have shared about finances lately. I understand we all like spoiling him, but consider the implications this has on the household. It was precise and calculated, the perfect blend of concern and revelation. As I clicked send, my palms sweaty and heart missing a beat, I sank back onto my bed, the darkness of my room absorbing my exhilaration. My mind raced with possibilities. Would they be angry? Perhaps shocked? Or would they rally around the truth? The anticipation bubbled in my stomach, churning with the excitement that danced alongside my anxiety. It was a thrilling risk, and mostly it felt right. I lit a candle, its warm flame flickering in the dark, reminiscent of the spark of rebellion igniting within me. Will they finally see the truth? To my disbelief, the responses came swiftly. My uncle replied first, his surprise evident. "While I did not know, Jason never tells us these things. He has been acting more carelessly lately." I could practically hear the gears turning in his mind as he processed the information, slowly beginning to align with my view. Quicker responses from my relatives felt like currency, affirming my worth, turning the tide of attention I had long craved. "Are we sure this is all accurate?" My aunt chimed in skeptically, trying to summon a hint of doubt, but I was resolute. I knew what I had seen and I had copies of everything. "No one wants to believe it, but it is true," I replied confidently, reassuring them as I felt an electric charge of adrenaline run through me. The evidence is there and it's hard to ignore it. Each notification pained me with joy. There was beauty in this unfolding chaos. "Can he really be this irresponsible?" my cousin asked, and I could almost hear the gasp from across the phone line, the shock palpable even in text. With each response, I felt my family's loyalty shifting like sand underfoot, slowly beginning to drift away from him. Moments later, another message popped up, a soft but determined response from my mother. "I will have to speak to him." I had a feeling something wasn't right, but I thought he just needed to vent. It seems we might have spoiled him a little too much. I felt triumph welling up in me as I read her words, like a balloon inflating until it was at its limit. Finally, I had their attention. I had taken my family's blindness and flipped it on its axis. Now they were all pondering the very subject that had plagued my own heart for years. "Mom, if we can't talk about these things, we can't help him," my uncle added. The realization was contagious, sparking an awakening. The second brother I had known, my brother, the one who could do no wrong, was cracking under the weight of the truth, and nobody even knew it yet. As the conversations deepened, questions echoed through the family chat, my relatives probing into what my brother had become, a target in my web of truth. I could hardly contain my growing glee as I read their messages. Faces flesh out in my mind's eye, mouths gaping in disbelief, questioning how they had let it slip. Days later, I sat down at the table for dinner with my family, my heart thundering as I awaited Jason's arrival. The atmosphere was heavy, thick with tension and uncertainty. The normally lively chatter fell quiet, forks and knives clattering softly against plates as everyone stole glances at one another. Jason walked in, oblivious, his confident stride chewing through the air like a hammer striking stone. "Hey everyone, what's up?" His voice boomed, a jarring contrast to the silent unease. I studied his expression, how unknowing he was, like a little boy blissfully unaware of the storm clouds gathering overhead. But the curtain had fallen and the scene was set. He had no idea that he had become the subject, the focus of critical eyes. "Hey Jason," I said, feigning innocence, meeting his gaze as I stirred the pot. "Did you hear what everyone has been talking about?" He chuckled, the sound carefree, but I could see a flicker of confusion pass through his features. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Slowly, my mother's words emerged, plunging into the air like an unexpected wave. "Jason, we need to talk about your spending." I could feel the tension flush in the room, an unspoken agreement forming a cage around my brother. His relaxed facade melted away, revealing uncertainty and perhaps even a hint of vulnerability. "Wait, what? Why?" "I thought everything was fine." "Not everything is fine," my dad chimed in, his voice sharp but desperate, weighing his words with caution. "Victoria mentioned some concerning things that I think we need to address." Suddenly he snapped his head to me, eyes narrowing, suspicion swimming through him. "What have you been saying?" "Just what I saw," I said, not looking away, my determination hardening like steel. "Don't act surprised, Jason. The evidence has been there all along." I could see it the moment his world tilted off its axis. The questions called in like a ravenous swarm, stinging and relentless, but I was the one who directed the attack. The conversation spiraled, and all I could do was watch as my brother unraveled, the nights of recklessness rolling to reveal a larger narrative. The truth finally revealed, moment after moment, until the curtain fell hard on the life of luxury he had taken for granted. At that moment, I felt a weight lift, a rush of catharsis overwhelming me. I had climbed out of the shadows into the brilliance of truth, and for the first time in forever, my voice was no longer hushed. I had ignited a revolution within my family, but only time would tell if they were ready to accept it. The reaction was immediate. Within hours, my family was abuzz, shock rippling through the air like an electric current. I could almost hear the hum of disbelief as stunned voices echoed off the walls of our family home. My brother's behavior, his careless spending and reckless decisions, had finally caught up to him. The truth lay exposed before us all, and I watched the fallout unfold, my heart racing like a drumbeat, thrumming loudly in my ears as I listened to family members confront him, each question like an arrow aimed at his pride. "I can't believe you did this." My mother's voice trembled, the words almost getting caught in her throat as she gripped the table with shaking hands, staring him down with eyes red and swelling. "What were you thinking?" The disappointment was palpable, thickening the air around us, and I could see my father standing beside her, his fists clenched at his sides, processing the chaos that was unfolding through his own dark cloud of emotions. "Mom, Dad, come on, you are overreacting." My brother shouted, his voice rising, and I noticed the way his jaw clenched tightly, the muscles in his neck flexing as if they were ready to snap. "This is all just blown out of proportion. I borrow a little money and suddenly I'm the villain. I have always been responsible." Responsible? How could he even utter that word after everything? I felt a simmering sense of satisfaction washing over me. He had never wanted to change, never felt the need to admit his faults. In his betrayal of trust, the carefully constructed tower of lies he built around himself was finally crumbling. He was now left standing on sand, and I was filled with an intoxicating mixture of glee and disbelief as I observed the drama unfold. "I just don't get it," my father finally spoke, his voice low yet cracking under the strain of the moment. "You have always had our support, but this—" He gestured towards several unopened bills strewn carelessly on the kitchen table as if unsealed envelopes could somehow embody this shame. "This shows you don't care about the trust we have in you." "The trust?" My brother scoffed, almost as if the word burned his tongue. "It doesn't mean anything. You think I'm using your money irresponsibly. You've had more faith in me than I ever had in myself. I could say I have faith in you too if you weren't, blowing through money like it's confetti at a parade." I couldn't help but interrupt, feeling a rush of adrenaline course through me. The moment had come. The moment where I could step out of the shadows after years of being overlooked. "You didn't even bother to think about the consequences of your spending. How can you expect us to stand by you when you don't even stand by yourself?" He turned to me, eyes blazing with a mix of fury and disbelief. "You think this affects you? You think I care what you say? You've always seen me as the enemy. You want to stab me in the back now, too. We're not enemies. You made your choices. You've always acted like there are no repercussions. I shot back, fire growing with every word. And now the truth is out. Your reckless choices have consequences. My brother's expression twisted with rage, but I could see the moment his anger faltered, doubt seeped in. Suddenly, the bravado he had woven around himself began to fray, and the fear began to show itself in the tightness of his mouth and the way his hands began to tremble. Stop ganging up on me, you don't know what I go through, he yelled, desperation creeping into his tone. I could sense his vulnerability in that moment, like a wounded animal desperate for refuge. But it felt too late. His well-worn excuses were like leaves blown away in a storm, no match against the facts that hung heavy in the air around us. I know exactly what you have done, and we've all watched while you squandered what you had. My mother interjected, her voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and fury. You should consider yourself lucky there is still a trust at all for you to spend. As if choreographed, my parents oppressed the silence like a curtain falling, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over the room as my brother leaned back, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Lucky? You think I'm lucky? Look at her. She gets everything handed on a silver platter while I have to scrape by with what little you leave me. Accusation struck like a punch to the gut. That's not true. You do not get to blame me for the choices you've made. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, hearing my voice quiver as I tried to suppress the bitterness mingling with my relief. My mother put a hand to her forehead as if she were trying to ward off a mounting headache caused by the light and noise of our family dynamics. This isn't how we raise a family, she said softly. We should support each other, not tear each other apart, but you have to take responsibility. We feel like we just woke from a nightmare, and you still pretend everything is fine. It isn't. Maybe you choose to ignore what's really going on and just keep chugging along like nothing's wrong. My brother snapped back, venom dripping from his words. You all act like you care, but we know the truth. What truth could there possibly be? My father roared, the dogged frustration in his voice shaking the walls. My heart beat heavy in my chest. This was so much bigger than any of us. You have turned your back on this family and wasted every trust we placed on you, he said, his voice low yet thunderous. Your mother and I are at the end of our rope. This isn't just about you anymore. If this continues, we will have to cut you off. Is that what you want? I felt a mixture of dread and exhilaration as I watched my brother's face change. His bravado faded, revealing vulnerability I hadn't expected to see. Cut me off, he repeated, incredulity dancing in his eyes. You can't be serious. I'll change, I promise. We have heard promises before, but when have you ever delivered? My father spat, shaking his head. You put your wants above your family. It's not just about money, it's about trust, about knowing you're working to be better. Inheritance, my mother muttered as she exchanged a tense glance with my father. My heart pounded in response to her words. The topic was finally on the table. Yes, inheritance. It's time we talk about what is left for the both of you. The tension thickened as if we were standing on a tightrope stretched above a vast abyss. I could feel my brother's unease, that weight of realization hanging heavily in the air. I barely dared to breathe as my father's gaze became steely, unwavering. We can't continue on this path. You've squandered what we entrusted to you. Suddenly, the silence burst like a bubble. How can you do this to me? My brother cried, voice cracking, his composure hanging by a thread. After everything, this time I could see the shift happening beneath the surface. My heart raced with an anxiety I couldn't quite place. You have had everything. You got to be the favorite child. Meanwhile, I was pushed aside. I shouted, voice steady, the fear of emotions coursing through me. And look where it has gotten you. Not a child anymore. Why are you acting like this? He shouted again, desperation seeping into his voice. The air pulsed with tension as my father inhaled deeply, discerning each word with a heavy heart. You're right, you're not a child, but your decisions show a lack of maturity. You will need to grow up. You are about to lose everything. He resisted, stubbornly shaking his head, fists balled at his sides. Yet beneath that defiance, I saw flickers of fear dancing in his eyes, a recognition of the truth crashing over him like waves. You can't do this. You can't take everything away from me just because I made mistakes. But you took advantage of our trust, my mother countered softly, voice trembling. I'm so sorry. We wish the best for you, but if you continue this reckless path, you leave us no choice. It would be such a devastating loss for us all. My brother's shoulders drooped, and for the first time I sensed vulnerability seeping through the cracks of his facade. I just didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't think it would come to this. You have let us down, I said bluntly, feeling steely resolve harden in my heart. And it's finally catching up to you. Your behavior has consequences. I can still remember the moment when, faced with a truth he couldn't escape, the realization hit him steadily like a quiet tsunami. All those years of reckless sailing, thinking he could navigate through the storm without looking back. I could see the tide changing. My parents had waited too long for this moment, and now my brother was flailing against the current. This is it, my father said solemnly, cutting through the tension like a knife. We need to make it clear that you will no longer have access to the inheritance if you are not willing to grow up and take responsibility. As the weight of those words sank into the room like stones, the reality felt electric. I could feel relief flooding through me, but it was accompanied by an unparalleled bitterness witnessing last-ditch efforts at accountability eroded into desperation. My brother slumped in his chair, a defeated soldier who lost the war before it even began. Looking at him, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and vindication. Everything shifted now, eyes now focused on me, and as I looked around the room, I knew the hierarchy had changed. The air buzzed with uncertainty, yet within me flourished the budding strength I had long been waiting to own. The unraveling had begun. The sunlight streamed through the drapes of my childhood bedroom, casting soft, golden patterns across the floor. I stood in the center of the room, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender and wood, a smell deeply etched in my memory, yet today it felt different. Today it felt like home. I allowed the warmth of the sun to settle into my bones, a stark contrast to the years spent in my brother's shadow, where I was often overlooked, a mere whisper among loud proclamations of his achievements. My heart swelled with the satisfaction of knowing that the winds of change had finally blown in my favor, reshaping the family dynamics that had once suffocated me. The walls that surrounded me echoed back the laughter of shared childhood, but now, they felt like guardians witnessing my resurgence. I glanced at the large oak dresser that held the remnants of my past, a collection of trophies, ribbons, and a fading photograph of us together as children, smiles wide and innocent. I picked up the frame, tracing my finger over the glass that contained the moment, his arm slung over my shoulders, a loving but possessive hold. I had always been the sidekick, the one cheering from the sidelines. It was just a phase, I murmured to myself, a small sigh escaping my lips. But the phase had stretched for too long, and I was finally stepping out into the light. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my reverie. "Victoria, can we come in?" It was my parents, their voices tentative yet warm. I placed the photograph back on the dresser, straightening my posture. "Of course, come in," I replied, the excitement bubbling beneath my words. As they entered, I was met with looks that were a mixture of vulnerability and hope. My mom stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and my dad stood a half step behind her, hands in his pockets, the embodiment of resolved determination. I could feel their energy shift as they approached, diffusing the tense air that had lingered for too long. "We wanted to talk to you," my mom began, her voice trembling slightly. "You have no idea how sorry we are for the years we spent blind to your struggles." "You deserved better from us," my dad added, his deep voice steady but softened with sincerity. "You have always been the heart of this family, and I let my pride blind me. We should have recognized your achievements sooner." I took a deep breath. The words they spoke were like music to my ears, each note resonating with long-held frustration and desire for acknowledgement. "I appreciate that," I said softly, my voice steady, but inside a storm raged. For so long, I felt invisible, like I was merely a shadow to Gareth's brilliance. I hated that I had to call my brother by his name, but it felt fitting in this moment. I had taken back my identity away from the context of our shared history. "It was never our intention to make you feel that way," my mom insisted, stepping closer. "We were so caught up in trying to guide him, we failed to see you, our own daughter." Her voice broke slightly. "You are as talented and wonderful as he is. Today we want to make it right." The weight of their words fell upon me like a warm blanket wrapping around my uncertainties. Yet they did not erase the years of neglect and pain. They simply opened a door I thought would remain forever locked. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, curiosity battling with the remnants of distrust. Dad exchanged a glance with Mom before turning back to me. "We've realized that this house was never just his. It has always belonged to you too, and we want you to know that." The mention of the house felt like an electric shock, igniting memories of the fights over who would inherit their legacy, the too loud celebrations resounding from gatherings dedicated to my brother. "So, you mean I am welcome here, like for real?" I asked, my heart racing. "Yes, and we want you to take the lead on the renovations. You have a vision. We want to see it brought to life," Mom said, looking proud and hopeful, a striking contrast to the woman who always treated my creativity as a mere hobby. "Arranging everything to suit your tastes will be our first step to making up for the years," Dad chimed in, his deep voice filled with warmth. My chest swelled with emotion. I don't know what to say," I started, feeling the weight of their sincerity. The air felt thick with anticipation as I looked from one parent to the other. "But I want to create a home filled with love, laughter, and warmth. I was tired of being in the shadows, but with your support, I think I can finally be the person I'm meant to be." My mom nodded, tears now streaming down her cheeks, glistening with the sunlight that streamed through the window, a beautiful sight of redemption. "You can be whoever you want, sweet girl. Starting now, we will make it all right, even if it takes time." As the conversation unfolded, reliving years spent yearning for love and appreciation, I leaned into their outstretched hands, accepting the family I had hoped for so long to have. What mattered now was standing firm in my identity, knowing that I could create a beautiful sanctuary for myself, no more shadows, only light. But then, thoughts of my brother crept back in, much like a lingering scent that refuses to fade. I couldn't ignore the fact that his choices had led him down a path of disillusionment and despair. I had heard whispers of how his financial decisions had spiraled out of control, his entitlement leading him to make reckless choices, leaving him disoriented in a world of mounting pressure. These choices increasingly alienated him from the family, now casting him as the black sheep, a reality that felt bittersweet and, if I were honest, a touch satisfying. Is Gareth okay? I asked finally, genuine concern punctuating my voice despite the conflicting emotions bubbling inside me. There was a hint of vindication in my thoughts that I tried to push aside. I hope he is dealing with his issues. My dad glanced at my mom and a silence enveloped us, pregnant with unspoken words. He is struggling, he said slowly. His spending has caught up with him. He went on a few wild spending sprees and now he's asking for financial advice and support. It's been hard for him to grasp the consequences of his decisions. Good, I thought, an unexpected wave of satisfaction coursing through my veins. It felt strange to experience such relief for his downfall. Was it wrong of me? I didn't rejoice in his struggle, yet how could I ignore the long-held pain of being overshadowed by him? That's life, isn't it? I offered, my voice steady, masking the thrill that lay beneath the surface. We reap what we sow, right? My parents exchanged glances once more, their eyes revealing a depth of disagreement I could almost taste. We want to help him, my mom broke in, her voice tinted with maternal instinct. He needs us. Mom, I started, but she gently cut me off. I know it's tough for you, but our love doesn't have to be conditional. We want to help him find his way back. I nodded, my emotions swirling. The warmth of their love bathed over me, anchoring me while their love for him pulled them in another direction. I want to be part of the discussion. I want my voice to matter, not just his. I promise we will fight to make sure you are at the center of this family, Dad said, his voice firm and kind. Our priorities are shifting, and this time it will be different. For the first time, I felt a sense of belonging, of agency that I never allowed myself to believe in. The house was alive with the fresh possibilities ahead. Paint colors were dancing in my mind and textiles fluttered into view. I envisioned family gatherings filled with shared laughter and shared recipes, stories told in the corners during cozy evenings, those intimate glimpses into our family's heart. I want to turn this place into a home that reflects us, I said, determination flaring in my tone. I want it to be warm and welcoming, with colors that soothe and energize all at once. Maybe we can create a garden? A garden sounds lovely, Mom replied, her enthusiasm kindling a small flame of hope. Something vibrant and alive. The conversations continued, and every passing minute filled the room with renewed energy and purpose. I felt the roots grow deeper into the family soil, no longer just an outsider peeking in. My parents listened. They silently understood how my passion, once hidden, slowly fueled itself. Let us spend the weekend cleaning out a space together, I proposed, light dancing in my eyes. We'll all decide how to make this space ours together. Count us in, Dad exclaimed, a broad smile spreading across his face. As I fought back the unshed tears blurring my vision, I realized just how powerful this shift was. I had finally moved away from being the invisible daughter, no longer just a shadow. Instead, I emerged as a beacon ready to brighten our family chapter, ready to continue crafting the family bonds I had yearned for, the love I deeply craved. Just as I was enveloped in this wave of joy, my phone buzzed, jolting me back to the present. The short vibration felt like a whisper of impending turmoil. I picked it up to find a message from Gareth. Can we talk? It read. I hesitated, my heart clenching ever so slightly. Unbeknownst to him, I had been silently reveling in the sweet taste of revenge, and yet, amidst that revelation, I felt a glimmer of empathy creep back in as I looked out the window, realizing the one who had once been my closest friend now stood on shaky ground. Of course, if that's what you want, I typed back, unsure of the emotions that lurked beneath the surface. The winds had changed, but with them, a tempest of unresolved feelings still lingered about my brother. One glance back at my parents, whose expressions mirrored both anticipation and concern, solidified that whatever lay ahead, we would face it, not just as individuals, but finally as a family. I stood tall in this moment, reclaiming my rightful place and readying myself for the future ahead.